All right, so we are here for the third seminar of this series, which is building your brand and online marketing for the lawyer in the online world. So my name is Justine Anderson. I'm an associate at Carroll and O'Day Lawyers, and I'm also on the WLA Executive Committee, and I also co-chair this Welcome to the Law subcommittee with Stephanie Lambert, who, for those of you who have been here through the whole series, you would have seen that Steph had hosted the earlier seminars. So I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the Wangal clan of the Eora people on whose land I presently am on, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and emerging. I'd also like to say a big thank you to HFW for hosting this webinar. And in today's seminar, we will hear from Sally King, who will discuss the ways networking and marketing are instrumental in growing your practice. This session will focus on the importance of business development with a focus on personal BD and marketing in the COVID-19 world. So Sally King is the head of marketing and business development at Coleman Gregg. Sally is a tertiary qualified and highly experienced marketing communications professional with substantial senior level experience covering strategy and planning, leadership and communication, branding and promotion, digital content, campaign development, market research, and event management. Sally works closely with Coleman Gregg's principals across all areas of the practice to execute marketing and business development strategies. Sal has extensive networks, having worked in private, public and non-for-profit sectors, and is a member of the Australian Legal Practice Management Association and has served on the New South Wales Committee as chair and as director on the national board. In 2019, Sally co-authored and published The Marketer's Guide to Law Firms, How to Build Bridges Between Fee Earners and Fee Burners in Your Firm. So before I hand over to Sally, I'd just like to give a quick reminder that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function within the Zoom screen, which you'll find at the bottom. All right, well, Sally, take it away.
Thanks, Justine, and hello everyone. I'm always happy to do these sessions for WLA, although last year we did it in a physical face-to-face environment. So this is the first time I've done one of these on Zoom. So the setup for today, just to take you through it so you know what's coming. So I'll talk until about 20:35, 12:35, and then we'll do a fishbowl, depending on how we're going for time, between Justine and I, in relation to BD's, Justine's own BD journey. And then in the last 15 minutes, there'll be a chance for us to interact and for us to answer questions that you might have put into the Q&A. At the end of each section, it's sort of like in 3 sections. If we've got time, we'll also respond to some of your Q&A as well. So in the first part, we're going to talk about the importance of BD to lawyers, and it's sort of skewed towards lawyers who are recently admitted lawyers, but not exclusively, but it's sort of, the talk is sort of skewed towards that. We're going to talk about the difference between BD and marketing, and that's because that's probably just my own little hobby horse, but I do like to get it into every one of these talks so that I'm educating the profession about the difference, and it will become of interest to you once we get to the little activity that I built into the session. We're going to talk about why lawyers need to BD, budgets, fees and practice growth. And we're also going to talk about, if BD never ever feels right for you, maybe you need to make a change and think about, where you're at in your career and what you really want to do. We're going to talk about COVID-19, internal marketing tips for that. And we're going to start there actually. And then standing out in an online world, do's and don'ts and common mistakes that I see. So we only have a short amount of time, and you can hear just from what we're trying to cover, it is going to be a bit of a gallop through. I do think sometimes, you could spend really 2 hours on this stuff. But anyway, the structure of the talk is as I've laid it out, and I'll get started on the internal marketing, some tips. So what I want to say is that I'm not telling you anything when I say that 2020 has been a challenging year, and in particular for people who've recently been admitted as lawyers and are in private practice law firms, or probably in the law anywhere really. It's really going to be quite a challenge to create a professional identity through the usual ways of observing, partners and principals who are more experienced, and identifying role models to follow, and getting all that stuff, which all that informal learning is that we learn by osmosis, good and bad, seeing how people handle difficult clients, seeing what happens with a decision, what happens after that advice has been written. You learn all of that when we're all physically together at work. But in 2020, because of the global pandemic, we're all working from our own homes. You can see that I'm at home today doing this talk, and it's a very different environment. And I think for people who are more experienced and who are more senior, it's probably a little bit easier in ways than it is for people who've been recently admitted. So one of the ways I think to get that kind of experience that you can only get by being near people who've got more experience than you is to ask. And so one of the things that I'd suggest is that, you really put yourself in a position where you can be helpful. So, talk to partners about, being the person who's in the Zoom or who's on the conference call, who's the note taker. And if you've got IT skills and you know how to use Zoom and you can do breakout rooms and all that sort of stuff, that can be really helpful on really big Zoom conferences. So suggest that to the person who's your supervisor. Get yourself in there so that you can observe, so that you can see people's emotional reactions, and you can learn about how to be an ethical lawyer as well, while people are in the practice of actually making decisions and working with clients. I'd say the other thing that I would, for lawyers to remember is that it's not all up to you. It really is up to the business and to partners and principals to create these opportunities for recent graduates and people who don't have a lot of experience. You can knock on doors and you can ask and you can send emails, but law firms are very busy places. You want to weigh up whether or not the practice that you're in is providing those opportunities for you. To balance that out, what I would say too is that where you are involved, you've had to make some contribution. You also have to be patient, I think, until you can get the really interesting work. You don't want to be one of those annoying people who sort of thinks that they need to be the managing partner within 3 months of joining the firm. But, so patience is a thing, but also, if you don't squeak, you don't get any oil. So finding a way to have that conversation with people and say, maybe when you talk to that client, maybe it could be a conference call rather than just a call between you and them, just a one-to-one. And I think if you raise that and put that in people's minds, I don't think people would object. It's just a matter of putting that out there so that people can actually think about you. My final tip in relation to this is that make friends with marketing and BD. Sometimes what I see with, recent graduates and people who've just joined law firms, not so much for people who've had careers before, but for people who've just done the HSC, gone to uni and joined a firm, they sometimes don't want to be seen with the lightweight side of the firm. It's a threat to their own professional identity. I want to be taken really seriously as a lawyer. I don't want to be over there in marketing. Particularly, I don't want to be directed to do anything in marketing. But one of the mistakes I think that you're making there is that there are often people in those areas of the business who are quite influential and have a lot of experience. And if you're not getting access to talk to clients or take calls or see the hurly-burly of how all that side of the business, the client-facing side happens, you can really benefit by finding out what goes on there and strengthening those relationships. So they're my tips for internal marketing. And I think that's almost as important as what we do externally, particularly if you're a recently admitted lawyer. You don't always have the confidence or the expertise to be jumping onto something like LinkedIn and saying, I think this about XYZ decision. And you probably do just need to focus on building up your legal skills. However, I'd also say that sometimes what I see with recent graduates and even people who've got 3 to 4 PAE, they feel that because they're not sitting on the Supreme Court or something, or they're not a partner, that they're not entitled to have an opinion and to, have an article or to maybe do something in the media. And what I would say to you and really encourage you to think about is that there's room for all different perspectives. And it's just as interesting to hear what Judge so-and-so might have to say, or partner so-and-so with 30 years of experience, as it is from a young woman who's recently been admitted to the law. She's got a couple of years experience and she thinks this about that. That makes it, I think, a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to take you through some slides now in relation to the theme of today. And I'll just have to share my screen. Get these slides up. Okay, Me Inc., building your brand and online marketing for the lawyer in the online world. What's the difference between marketing and BD? This is something that I just want to point out. On the marketing side, you have things like promotion, brand, advertising, website management, social media, and design. That's all in the marketing basket. On the business development side, so that you know what you're doing, whether you're doing marketing or whether you're doing business development, on the BD side, you've got coaching, you've got obtaining new clients, relationship management, client targeting, pricing, and tenders. So when you're thinking about what your strengths are, you need to think about, what am I looking at? Is it a promotional? Is it a marketing aspect? Or is it a business development? It helps you sharpen your focus. And some firms break this up even further. So you'll have business development, you'll have marketing, and you'll have communications. And some people even have subgroups within that, just tenders and bids. So it's important to know that it's not just all marketing. These things differ. I also want to talk about anxiety, and I've spoken about COVID, and I think this is the umbrella over which we're talking about today, because you can't really talk about business and development and even an online sort of presence without talking about, I think, COVID-19. And there is some really interesting research that was done by Brand New Australia, the lab and Nature Agency, which sampled 6,000 Australians. And that was in June 2020. And what they found out, that was 50% of Australians in that sample expect the next few years to be quite difficult. And 44% were unable to relax until a vaccine is found. And I think, interestingly, 65% of that group believe that COVID-19 presents opportunities in the form of a reset and re-evaluation of how we live our lives. And 58% want a simpler life once the pandemic is over. So that was broken down into 5 groups, into safety seekers, and they're people who won't relax until the vaccine is found. Then there are the strugglers, the people who have maybe lost their jobs or finding it very difficult financially. Then there are the opportunists. There are people who say, hey, I see a real upside to this pandemic. All this communication and technology and working from home is great. I can see XYZ opportunity. And then there are the simplifiers. They're like the people who've moved to the country. I don't have to be in the city anymore. I want a simpler life. And then the returners. That tends to be skewed towards a younger demographic. And they're people who are sort of saying, I've got no time for this COVID-19. I just want to party and hang out with my friends, and I'm pretending it's not really happening. And the reason why I mention this is because you're probably thinking about, well, what am I? Am I a safety seeker or am I an opportunist? And you also need to think about the people that you're reporting to, the partners, the principals, the people who are in your team. Where are they in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic? And then how you interact with them and how you think about that. And then with clients as well, because they're in this group as well. We're all impacted by it and it's there. So it's the umbrella under which all this stuff sits.
Sally?
Yeah.
Can you just recenter your slides? They're just a bit off to the side. You might have to, is it in presentation mode?
Yeah, it is on my side, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit, yeah. I don't know if you can like zoom out a bit, but that's better than what it was. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It looks, on my screen it looks fine. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. Hang on, we'll see what happens. To see if this video works, one of the things that I want to show this video because I love it, but it also, I think, sums up marketing and BD. It sums up my approach, and I think it also sums up everyone's approach in terms of marketing and BD. So here we go. Do you want to see it again? I'll show it to you again. So I don't know, could you see that, or is that a problem with it being skewed off the screen?
Yeah, it's still a bit of a problem, but I saw the little girl jumping off onto the soft mat, and then does she put her thumbs up or something?
She puts her hands up. I don't know how to fix this. Hang on, let me just see. I'll retry and share my slides again. So I'll stop the share. So yeah, it's in presentation mode. So I don't know what the fix is there, Justine. Just hang on, I'll move it through and see what happens. So can you only see a part of that? You're on mute, Justine.
Much better now.
Oh, really? I wonder what that is. Okay. Yeah. All right. So with this slide, I think it's all this stuff that I've been talking about in terms of how the world is with COVID, how people are broken up into these 5 different types. What do you believe about business development is really an important point for you to think about. There are some people who are never, ever going to be interested in doing business development. I've met them in firms, and when we wrote the book, I read a lot of research and transcripts and listened to a lot of interviews with lawyers in firms all around the world. And there were some people who said that, you know, when I went to law school, I just wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't really think that I would ever have to think about the business side of things. But it's a reality in private practice. Business development is an expectation, and business development is really something that helps people grow and build their practices. But some people, I think, just really resist it, and others really embrace it, and others are bewildered by it and just want steps as to what do I need to do and how do I do it. But I think you have to really get to the bottom of what your attitude is around business development. Is it something that I just don't know how to do and I need to learn more about? Or is it something that it just doesn't suit my personality? And I think there are things, if you are going to stay in private practice, this is really something, the point on this slide, which I will read out in case you can't see it all, but it says you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it sounds like a little cliche, but if we don't ever get out of our comfort zone and get into business development, even if we don't really like the idea, your career sometimes won't progress. You can be what they call a grinder in a firm and just do the law, and a partner might feed you work, but there are risks attached to that because sometimes the partner might leave, someone else might come along, and you can get to a position of leadership and not have skills in relation to business development. And by that stage, it's too awkward to ask because you're already quite senior. So getting comfortable with being uncomfortable around business development and marketing is really a step that people need to take. Why do you need to do it? Because you all will have and you will continue to have budgets. If you're in firms, you'll need to make budget, and it's always you're either ahead of budget or behind budget or on budget. And business development gives you strength, I guess, in that. But it also means that you become important to the business and to the practice. Even if partners are giving you work, eventually they will want to see you bringing work in the door. And so the way to enhance your own career and also develop your own client portfolio is to business development. But how do you do it? Particularly, when it's bewildering or you haven't had any training in it. It really starts with this. which is knowing yourself and then business develop accordingly. I've worked with lawyers who've come to me with business development plans, and they're really long and they're full of tactics, and it's all kinds of different things. And sometimes they're overly ambitious, and it's simply because they haven't actually thought, well, what am I good at? What's going to be my groove? It's just a scattergun approach to doing a whole lot of activity. And that's fine in the beginning, because you find out, I think, through that experience what you're good at, but you really have to think about, who am I as a person? What is my strength? What are my weaknesses? And how do I develop business accordingly? So I've got a little slide coming up, and I don't know if you can see it, but I want you to take a few minutes to look at it and think about yourself as a business developer. You might want to take a photo of it. It really is one of the things that you need to know, and I think it can take you a long way in your career. If you take a photo of this and you keep it on your phone, it can really serve you all the way through your time as a lawyer. What are my strengths? They might change over time, but what are they now? What are your weaknesses? What are things that you're not good at? We all have them. Who are your circle of supporters? And I think it's important to think about people outside of the firm and beyond your family. People who can support you and help you and give you honest feedback. What steps do you need to take to develop business for your practice? And what does success look like for you? So one of the things that I also see with young lawyers is this fear around business development because of not taking a step, because of perfection, worrying about, well, if I don't do it perfectly right, I won't do anything at all. And that's really why I showed that clip. And it's a shame that you couldn't see the whole thing. But with that clip, it's about trying. It's about having a go. And if you can narrow it down to what are your strengths and your weaknesses, who's going to support you, break it down into steps and what success looks like for you, it becomes a lot easier. And I would also say that someone said to me a really long time ago that perfection is just a mask that fear wears. And I think that's a message that I do want to convey to people who are going into the profession. I've worked with lawyers in government and with lawyers in private practice for many years now. And a common theme is perfectionism. And if you look at my friend Jill Tooby's website, it's called IKD Legal. There is some research on there, and it's a little bit old now, but I think it's still relevant about lawyers and perfectionism. So what that research found was that young women with anorexia had unrealistic expectations of themselves around perfectionism and that of others, and they were number one. And number two in the research outcome, lawyers sat not that far behind. And the reason I mention it is because sometimes perfectionism is seen as a virtue. Oh, I'm a perfectionist. I like to get things 100% right. But it can also be crippling when it comes to marketing and BD, because you can't make a move without it being perfect. And when you don't know what you need to do, you don't do anything. And then you build up these defences around marketing and BD because it's all just too complicated. I just want to focus on the law. So with perfectionism, what I would say is, if you think about it now, and it's all part of this knowing yourself. And if you're a more mature person and you've got more life experience, that's a little easier. It's harder when you've just left uni and you're in a firm. But these things are really important, because if you continue on with these perfectionistic standards and you become a leader, a principal, even a senior associate, a special counsel, then these perfectionistic standards that you have for yourself, you then hold others against as well. And I've seen young lawyers, coming back nervously with a piece of paper that they've been, that they've made a mistake on or something. But you have to have your L plates on with BD, particularly when you're just recently in the firm, and enjoy that. Embrace the L plate time. As I said, once you get to be the principal or the partner, it's almost like too late to be learning BD then. You really have to get onto this stuff when you are recently admitted. Now's the time. I don't really know. How do I do this? And answering these sorts of questions for yourself will put you in good stead. And success for you might look one way now, and it might look differently in 2 or 3 years' time, and you revisit it. So if you're a person who likes procedure, being on committees might be a good thing for you. If you're a person who's a pretty good writer, and I mean writing in ways that human beings can read, then maybe article writing and writing a book might be for you. If you're a person who comes from a family of entrepreneurs and you're really quite extroverted, networking and meeting new people. If you're an analytical sort of person, then maybe what you should do is be using that. And if you've got an undergraduate degree or deep connections into the community, maybe they're all strengths that you can work with to build a practice and a career that's interesting for you. And if you've got weaknesses, just acknowledge them. I'm not a networker. Then don't network. Focus on what you're good at. It might just be making yourself famous from getting onto the speaker circuit or doing stuff internally around some of those tips I was talking about before. This stuff about finding your niche and finding what you're interested in relation to BD can reduce a lot of anxiety that I see for lawyers in terms of trying to do stuff that you don't feel comfortable with. And it really is quite, intimidating. So work out what you're good at, what you enjoy, and leave the rest and find people who are like-minded, who will support you, and then work out the steps that you need to take and keep them realistic, and then reevaluate what success looks like for you. The online stuff is really not that complicated. You can Google LinkedIn gaps and you will come up with pages of information around what you should and shouldn't do with your LinkedIn page. LinkedIn is a really great tool. And I think when it started, people thought that it was just for people who were looking for work. And that's just so not true. It's a publishing platform and it really has evolved. But, one of the things that I say when I do LinkedIn sessions is that for recently graduated lawyers, you really want to avoid having a profile photo that doesn't make you look like an expert. You want to have something that's professional, not you in a university kind of role. You want to look like you're a professional. And then the other thing I'd say is complete your summary. So if you've got a bio on your law firm website, turn that into something that's in, an I statement that's written from you, and put that in, complete the summary and make your contact details accessible in the summary at the bottom. LinkedIn moves contact details around and they're quite hard to find. So they would be my really 2 big tips around LinkedIn. I think it's an important tool for professionals. There are some people who don't want to do it at all. And, those conscientious objectors are in firms and they usually have some other special talent that means that they're invaluable to the firm and they don't need to be on LinkedIn like other mere mortals. But LinkedIn can also be a very valuable tool for you if you use it correctly. And you can use LinkedIn if you're on the premium or if you've got a membership with something like the ALPMA to get into their learning and development. Their online learning is fantastic. The quality of the sessions is very good and there's a huge variety. And you can also get a certificate from them when you've completed the LinkedIn course, and you can add that to your profile if you want. So if you're someone who's looking to build your credentials and your CV in a certain area, even in BD, you can then add that and show that you've done that work. These are, I always put something at the end of these seminars in relation to looking after yourself. For those of you who don't know Andrew Denton, I guess he's a TV personality, he's a writer, he's a presenter. He presents long interview programs on the ABC, and I know he'll be well known to many of you. And I'll just leave that conversation, that quote there for you to read, where he talks about conversations that we have with ourselves. And going back to the video clip of that little girl who's trying so hard in her gymnastics routine, I think keep it in mind around business development. You know, we're all just doing our best, trying, I think, in our careers to really grow them. But, you know, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we need to have compassion for ourselves. And in that way, we free ourselves up to be creative and to try new things. And that's really what helps us get out of our comfort zone. And that's true in firms as well. So that feeling of embarrassment, or I don't want to ask, or I don't want to be seen to look silly, all of this stuff, I think, in this session is the message that I'm sending to you. Really think about that. Get to know yourself, find your niche, and reevaluate as you go and as your career grows and develops and as you change. This is the book that I wrote, and I think at some point today we will do some kind of, I don't know, go through the names of people who've registered or have turned up today for this session, and we'll send out a copy of the book to you, so some sort of business draw in a sort of virtual way. And now that's the end of the slide, so I'll stop the share. And now I'm going to talk to Justine about her business development journey. Are you ready, Justine?
I am. Grill away.
Let me find my questions. So I thought this would be of interest to lawyers who tuned in today to this session, because Justine is someone who I met a number of years ago, and I met her when she was just really joined the profession, really, I think. And her experience as a practitioner and what I observed in her answers today, that might be similar to yours, it might be different to yours, but I think hearing someone who's been on this journey can be educational, and we can all learn from it. So, Justine, my first question for you, and we haven't rehearsed these questions, by the way. When I met you, it was in a CLE. I remember it was on LinkedIn, and you were sitting up the front, and you were not one of those lawyers who had their LinkedIn page in order. 12 months, I think, went by. I keep an eye on everyone's LinkedIn pages when I'm working in marketing BD in the firm. Nothing much happened. And then, I don't know, 12 months, something changed, and you were publishing on LinkedIn. I mean, I was surprised initially that you weren't a LinkedIner, because you know, have all these skills. And then you were talking to me about all these marketing and BD ideas. And I was like, oh my God, something's changed. So what was that all about?
I think my partner, my boss, is massive on LinkedIn and loves tech and is always publishing. Like, he's got a little blog. It's not little, it's huge. And yeah, it's really well respected. And he had said a couple of things to me about, you know, his blog is something that he uses, not just because it's something that he's interested in, like he publishes about medical law and all that kind of stuff, but he's like, I also remind people, like I remind the profession that I'm still here, that, you know, I'm here and I'm working away, and, you know, I just kind of, to try and keep his name at the front of people's minds, because a lot of my work comes from word of mouth. And so also having been in that LinkedIn session with you, Sal, you're right. My LinkedIn profile had done all of the no-nos that, yeah, it had all of the hallmarks of like the terrible kind of LinkedIn, or no, not terrible, but just underbaked kind of LinkedIn profile. And it was something that I was like, I just didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And I just felt really overwhelmed. So I think after my partner kind of gave me a bit of a nudge, and I was kind of also getting pretty fed up with my own narrative of being like, oh, I'll get to it. So I just one morning at work, like I carved out some time and then just started to mold and shape the LinkedIn profile. And then because of the Women Lawyers Association, they do a lot of sharing of things, and I was in this subcommittee, and I wanted to feel like I was contributing to that conversation. And so I found LinkedIn as a good profile, as a good platform for profile raising for me, but also to support things that I felt were really important for women in the law at that time.
That's really interesting. I mean, in terms, you found your groove in a way, didn't you? Like, you had a supportive partner who's a bit of a marketing kind of, person himself. And that, I guess, in some ways, that's that role model stuff I was talking about earlier. And then also getting involved in a committee that you cared about, it provided a bit of an opportunity. So that's another set of tips, I think. So now I remember this, and I remember you driving, I think it was a little Corolla.
Yeah.
But storms, teeming rain, it was terrible really, to country locations to participate in some fairly big media opportunities that you pretty much worked out yourself. And so you have these relationships with Guardian journalists, which is something that you've nurtured, and, flying to Melbourne and all that kind of stuff. So do you want to tell others how you came to be in this position and why you put the effort in? Because I think when you did those trips, you then had to go back because I said, no, you need to be in the photos with the clients as well. So that meant 2 trips.
Yeah, I think so. For the thing that Sally's referring to, it was a feature article in Marie Claire magazine last year. And it was a pretty big deal. It was about a big medical case that I'm involved in, about a particular gynecologist who has kind of been at the heart of this big kind of like problem in terms of regional medicine. So I had the Guardian, so again, all attached to kind of my partner and my boss at work, fostering me having these relationships with people. So he had been phoned by this journalist called Melissa Davey at The Guardian for a quote for an article that she was writing about this particular like expose that she was doing. And my boss, Bill, had said, oh, look, yeah, I'm happy to do this, or you can speak to Justine. It might be a good thing for her, also might be a good thing for the case or like the story, because it's a female lawyer speaking about female issues. And so I was petrified naturally. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to say the wrong thing. I'm going to get the firm in trouble. All of that kind of fear-wearing, perfectionism kind of stuff. And so I just had to jump in and trust that I knew enough about the law that I was litigating on like a daily basis. And then after that, Melissa just kept kind of coming back to me about the same issue and some of the roadblocks that the case had kind of come up against and developments that had occurred in the story. And then suddenly Marie Claire got involved and this opportunity came up, and I spoke to some clients who wanted to get involved. Obviously, some clients are very, very private. Other clients were happy to share their story. And so, yeah, I drove through one of the worst storms, I think, going to, rural, country Australia for the shoot. And it was great. And it was something that was really outside of my comfort zone. But I think there's one thing that I've really noticed and have really appreciated about myself is that, yes, do this kind of stuff when you're like newly admitted, because you've got the time and you've got the flexibility and you've got the ability to make mistakes, and that people are happy to forgive mistakes, especially if you're like a junior lawyer and you're still learning. So that's all fine. So you've got that safety net. But I kind of have embraced putting myself into really awkward, uncomfortable positions for myself. And, I think that you can't have proper growth without really putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations. So when I feel like that, I just kind of have to remind myself that, no, this is for your own business development. This is marketing. It's supposed to feel a little bit, not hard, but awkward. And on that day when we were out shooting with the clients, I had to be on all day. The clients were asking me questions about the law. There was one of the women who was there wasn't my client. So I had to be very careful about, advice that I was giving and, whatever was happening. So it was a really interesting experience. I'm really glad that I did it. I think it was great exposure for the case. It was great exposure for the firm. It was great exposure for me. I got a lot of work out of it also in terms of how do you use BD to grow your practice. I got work out of that article.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that you put in a lot of effort on the prep. So, in terms of making sure that you could answer the questions within the limits, what to say, what not to say, how not to get tripped up. So in some ways, working, going and seeking information, having your L plates on, I think made everyone in the business feel quite comfortable that you were well prepared and all over it with enough sort of caution, I think, to do such, which really was quite a big media opportunity. Now, are there 8 questions in the chat, not in the Q&A, because it's 12:47. So
there's no questions in the Q&A, but there are a few comments have come through. One, that there was a suggestion that if people wanted to look at some other material about perfectionism, Catherine in the chat said to look at what I think is a book called The Pursuit of Perfection, or Pursuit of Perfect, which she found to be really interesting and helpful. And then Shauna asked if my partner wrote his own text. Yes, my partner is Bill Madden. He's written his own medical law textbooks, and equally he has his own blog. If you wanted to, I can give you the link later so that you can have a look at the kind of stuff that he blogs about. Yeah.
So I think then we've got time then for another question, which is, and I guess I just want to emphasize to people who are watching this to sort of say, you may not have had these same opportunities. It might be different in your firm. Maybe you've done other things. But one of the things that I know that you did, Justine, was that you won an award. I can't remember when it was, but for Business Development Lawyer of the Year. And what I want to know, and what might be interesting for the group, is did that award change anything for you mentally? Because what you were talking about before went a bit to mindset, I think, which was what I was the point that I was making in the slides. But did that change anything for you mentally about business development, sort of being recognised in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Like, I didn't know I was getting put up for the award, which was, just like internally within the firm. But it really emphasized and solidified and acknowledged the journey of BD that I'd been on. And I had a monster year in 2018. Sally and I, as I said, were working together on some stuff that I wanted to develop for the firm. I was really keen on raising my profile. I came to the law late, so I'm 34. I was admitted when I was 30, and I just felt like I was a bit behind the 8 ball, and I had a lot of life experience that was lending itself to my practice, but I really wanted to hasten getting to the next step and upskilling. And so I felt like business development was one of those things that would put me in front of the partnership and say to the partnership that I'm invested in the firm, I'm invested in my practice. I really want to I'm keen. And so the award was basically, for me, I felt like it was an acknowledgement from the firm that they had seen what I was doing, and they were happy for me to continue to do it, and they were happy to award me this award. So yeah, no, I felt like it was good validation for the work that I'd put in.
Yeah, and I actually think I remember I was at that event when they were, I think you were in the bathroom. I mean, you were so unaware. I mean, and I think, again, I just want to make this point that for those of you who, haven't had this same kind of success in BD, it is possible. It is about finding the groove, and it is about really, coming to grips with what is it that you can do, and that you can, I guess, have conversations about what you want. It's about the thinking and the knowing, not necessarily coming up with a big list of tactics. And then when opportunities come, having those relationships in place and having those connections. A lot of lawyers don't come to BD and talk about stuff, but those who are successful do. That's what I find.
Just a quick question here from one of our attendees. Shauna asks, what advice do you have for sole practitioners who may not have the time to dedicate to BD?
It's really hard, I think, for sole practitioners, because you are a bit of a one-man band. You're everything. You're your own HR, you're your own, accountant, you're everything. But I think you do, and I think you probably need to invest in some outsourcing so that you can get your marketing and BD happening. If nothing else, I'd recommend getting a company page on LinkedIn and trying to get some content to that. You do need to be able to, in what is a very competitive environment now, have some visibility. And while you might not be able to do that on top of everything else and getting the law right, you need to think of what other sole practitioners do. Look at people who are small firms and sole practitioners. Look what they're doing. Also talk to them, get to know them, find out how they make friends with them, have coffee with them, find out what they're doing, share, I guess, information, but also put in place what they're doing. And some of them are investing and outsourcing some of that stuff. Article writing, LinkedIn management, post to LinkedIn. If that's not your thing, if social media is not your thing, it comes back to finding your groove. What can you do to build your word of mouth? And that might be as simple as saying to clients who you've worked with, I'm really interested in working with you again, or I'm really interested in doing more of this kind of work. So send your friends to me. One of the partners, I think, who I first met when I first started working in firms, told me the old 2 business card trick, which is one for you and one for a friend. And, that might seem a bit bolshy for some of you, but you need to come up with these strategies, tips and tricks that work for you to build business. And a huge amount of work can come to you from those people who you've already done work for. And in COVID-19, acquisition of new clients is probably more of a challenge. Spoke about this in that session that I did for ALTMA, which is, BD in a global pandemic. It's about getting work out of the clients that you have, servicing them well, rather than acquisition, because it's really quite difficult. But sole practitioners, I think it's really about finding that circle of friends and support, talking to other people in the same boat, or those who are at the next rung up, those who've maybe, partnered with someone else and made their firm a little bit bigger. Do what they do, learn from them, and find what suits you. I think we have 5 minutes to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I wanted to say was that recommendation in the chat about that book on perfectionism. Can you read that out again?
Sure. I'll just move. So the text is called Pursuit of Perfect.
Right.
No author, but I'm sure if you just Google it, it would be available. But I was just going to say, Sally, way back when you did that LinkedIn seminar at Carol and O'Day, and I remember I was like, I know that I've got to get on top of this. It's terrifying. There were a couple of tips that you gave. You were like, you want to get over 500 connections. So I was like, oh, okay. So there I was connected. And I think you said, if you are not connected to every person in this firm that you work with, you should be. And so there was just then like a flurry of people's phones going off, connecting with one another to try and be like, get over 500. And, you had made some really great observations about, things that you should do or not do for your LinkedIn. So do you want to just maybe point out some of like the biggest do's and don'ts, like photos and stuff?
Connections is important because then you look like you've made it on LinkedIn, and people will judge you by who you're connected to. So you want to get to 500. So particularly think about people you went to uni with. At uni, it's like, yeah, I want to talk to that guy or that girl, but you never know where they're going to end up working. They could be running in-house in 5 years, for Telstra or for IBM, and you know them, and that's an in terms of having that conversation. So you want to connect to everyone in your firm because it shows the principals and the people in the leadership group that you're thinking about BD, and then you're in the conversation as well about what they're saying and what's on their mind, and it gives you a chance then to connect to the people that they're connected to. People who've been in the law for a long time know everyone. They've got, think of it like the old little black book. That's what LinkedIn is now. And so you really want to start thinking, if you are putting something on the firm's website, even if you're a co-author of something, talk to the partner, talk to the principal. Can I put a link on my LinkedIn page and start to build up your publishing? If you look on LinkedIn, you'll see that those people who've got the blue author, that means they've published quite a few articles. So you can post and you can also publish articles. And if you want to get sort of a really great LinkedIn profile, start to chase that author thing. And if your firm is associated with Mondac, Lexology probably do the same thing. if you publish a fair bit, then you can get, they have, greatest author of the year and all that kind of stuff. And as your career develops, when you get that stuff, it becomes a credential, and that gets you noticed in the firm. People go, oh, right, okay, so-and-so is an expert on XYZ or a really great writer. And people start to know you and you develop your niche that way. LinkedIn, I think, is an important professional platform that people really need to have skills around. And I think if you can change your banner as well to make it personal or put your firm branding up, then that also makes it look quite slick, and that makes you look slick.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't have a banner for a while, and I went away to the UK and I went and saw the Magna Carta, like the actual Magna Carta. So I suppose really nerdily, my banner is the Magna Carta.
which is cool for a lawyer. And like that, you can have a bit of fun with this thing as well, And if you're sort of wanting to set out what you're interested in, that summary also gives you a chance to say in a snapshot the sort of lawyer that you are. Like, I'm into this and I'm this kind of employee and this is what I'm about, and people get a sense of you. You can share video. LinkedIn is a very handy connection, and you can also connect with people when you're on premium that you're not, that you're a third degree away from, and you have a certain amount of emails. So that's also something that you can think about. But LinkedIn is very important, and use the firm's company page as well.
And what did you say? I can't remember the exact phrasing, but you said something about the what photo to pick on your profile.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those little, hobby horse things. But I think I alluded to it. But when you get admitted as a lawyer, it's an exciting thing, and your photo for that is for Facebook or your Insta, whatever. It's not for LinkedIn. And you with your your cap on, or you as a university student, don't have that as your LinkedIn profile, because it makes you look like a beginner. It's important. And if that slide that I had, LinkedIn gaffes, it's full of these kind of pussycat doll kind of LinkedIn. You want to have an image that is how I want to be seen professionally. And this may seem like 101, common sense. Who wouldn't? You'd be surprised. And and some people don't want to have a photo. That's also a weird thing on LinkedIn. People don't trust it. Photo is like, you need to have a photo. So you need to have a photo, and you need to have a professional photo. And if you really want to get into it, there is advice online about the sort of photo that you should have, like the best kind of photo for LinkedIn. Follow that so that you look like the professional that you want to be. Even if you don't feel like it, your LinkedIn page can create that perception.
Excellent.
I think the other point I always make in this vein is that, and people don't like to hear this, but there will be no bios on law firm websites one day. There is someone joining LinkedIn every 10 seconds around the world. It's so huge. If I Google anyone who's on this, any of you participants, your LinkedIn profile will come up first. So you might have your firm bio in top shape, but it's not that people will see. They will go to LinkedIn because it has more information about who you're connected to, and soon it will just be your LinkedIn profile. There will be no reason for firms to have bios. That's my prediction. It's other people's predictions as well. And those of you who don't like LinkedIn, that's probably terrible news, but LinkedIn is quite important in that respect. So it's not hard to use. You can learn it on a Saturday afternoon. It's really not that difficult. And there are free videos out there as well that you can watch.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've reached time, Sally, and I'd just like to say a big thank you for giving up your time to educate us all on the importance of online marketing. And every time I hear you speak, it reminds me of one extra thing that I've got to do to, tweak or change my profile. And I think that that's another thing to be mindful of. Like, you'll do the main work, but you also have to kind of tend to the profile. It's kind of like a bit of a garden. Like, it just requires constant, not like hectic maintenance, but yeah, you should constantly be, I find, moving, shaking, and kind of growing that online community. But I don't think there are any more questions, but in the event that anyone here has questions, you can email me at my firm website or you can check me out on LinkedIn, and all of my details will be there. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the attendees might have about my experience with BD. And thanks again, Sal.
Okay, you're welcome. And even though this is a virtual event and I haven't really got to meet you, it's really nice to meet you. And thanks very much to WLA for the opportunity. I'm always happy to support them, as I said at the intro. Okay, thanks very much.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.